Addressing the elephant in the room about how long this has taken to arrive. Real life's just got in the way. But we're back. It's Leeds. It's season 2. Welcome back to the Fresh Prince of West Yorkshire. After winning promotion in our first season in charge, it was time to embark on Premier League survival, and to do that, we need to strengthen. Our efforts in the transfer market so far have been pretty good, with Lorenzo Luca getting signing of the season in the Championship, and Franco Gonzalez also cracked the top 5. We then started our transfer business by shipping out Sam Greenwood to Saudi Arabia for 15.75 million. We saw Callum Hudson-Odoi available for free and tried to sign him on a pre-contract deal, but he opted for Palace instead. I felt Jack Harrison was going to be a squad option at best, so we moved him on for 30 million, again to Saudi Arabia. 30 million! And with that money, we went and purchased a couple of wonder kids. The first, Swedish sensation, your best friend and mine, Rooney Bargi. Less than 10 million, and despite a minimum fee release clause in his new contract and a relatively high wage, 100% worth it. We found another young prospect, Vicente Pizarro, who looks pretty decent, and at 3.6 million, definitely worth a punt. The next, we're in for Brazilian wonder kid Mateus França, 10.5 million, another decent signing for a decent price. We're building a strong foundation for years to come. Ryan Sessegnon was available on a free transfer, and we kinda need a right back more than a left back, but he's very good, be foolish to turn him down, so we signed him for 40k a week. The squad strengthening continued as we purchased Brazilian playmaker Victor Hugo. We might be a shade overloaded in that position now, but at 10.5 million, a bargain that I simply couldn't say no to. And Saudi Arabia came in for Tyler Adams. Now, I didn't especially want to sell him, but for 40 million, again, couldn't really say no. Now, with plenty of money to spend, we went back to Brazil. Otavio strengthened our resolve at the back for 9.25 million. Meanwhile, exciting young prospect David Washington was signed for 14.25. We shipped out Junior Firpo for 7.75 as he was surplus to requirements. Brendan Aronson also felt a bit surplus to requirements. Then a loan bid with an optional future fee came in. The money looked good, so we crossed our fingers and hoped they made it a permanent deal. Remember I said we need a right back? Well, we raided Sevilla for Jose Angel Carmona for around £17 million. Mohamed Elneny was available for a free transfer and he wanted a very reasonable wage, so a nice bit of squad strength coming in. Then we had to sell Roca to Saudi Arabia. He demanded to leave, and despite not wanting to sell him, 50 million was a fantastic price. That left us with £88 million to spend, and we have a pretty strong squad as it is. We splashed some cash to complete the squad, £26 million on wonder kid striker Jamie Donnelly from Spurs, and we also spent £25 million on Mandela Keita to shore things up as a holding midfielder, considering we lost Roca and Adams. We're up financially and Keita is younger with decent potential, so it's a net positive for me. Spending 147 million and recouping 199 million, with some coming in future instalments, the longevity of the club is becoming secure. With the signing of young wonder kids, the future's bright here at Leeds. We let a few other players go who were dead wood. Rodrigo departed for just under £1 million to get himself off the wage bill, but then we found some loan moves for youngsters who simply weren't going to get any game time. But I'm happy with the squad and don't feel the need to spend for the sake of it, and according to the season preview, the media think we'll finish 12th. I'll take that. So let's start the season in style against fellow promotion comrades Norwich. The season got off to a breathtaking start. Rooney Bargi scored 8 minutes into his debut, getting us off to a phenomenal start. Adam Idah scored not once, but twice for Norwich to make it 2-1 by half-time. We managed to turn the tide back in our favour with a well-taken finish from Alex Scott, then a back post header from David Washington, also on his debut. Unfortunately, we couldn't hold on as Adam Idah scored his hat-trick and it finished 3-3. What an opening game, at least for the neutrals. We followed this up with a 3-0 win against Burnley, and we got another 3 goals against Wolves, but we conceded 4. It was then a dismal time in the Carabao Cup as we lost on penalties to Leyton Orient, 9-8. But it was a clean sweep in the August Young Player of the Month competition, with Rooney Bargi, Alex Scott and David Washington taking home the trophies. And then Donny van der Beek had his contract terminated at United and was willing to come for just £17,000 a week. An absolute bargain, and not a bad squad player. Will definitely have use for a couple of seasons. We continued our rule of 3 as we put 3 past Villa, keeping it tighter at the back and only conceding 1, as we won 3-1. We kept up our winning ways just about as we embarked on a magnificent back and forth game against Brentford that finished 4-3, with us being the victors. A brace for Rooney Bargi and a brace for Mohamed El Neni. What signings! Rooney Bargi has been on fire so far this season. Surely signing of the season so far. We came unstuck against Arsenal as we lost 2-0 at the Emirates before we had a game against one of Leeds' biggest rivals, Manchester United. United went ahead in the first half with a deflected effort from Raphael Varane before we equalised in the second half as Rooney Bargi found Alex Scott, who tapped home. Parity was restored, but not for long as Bruno Fernandes lashed into the top corner. But it didn't end there as Buonanni found Jamie Donnelly in the 95th minute and equalised. A great comeback and a great point. This one definitely felt like a win. Unfortunately, that high was reversed as Chelsea did us over in the 89th minute as they won 1-0 in the next game. Then a comfortable 2-1 win against Palace left us in 8th after 9 games. 14 points on the board already, that magical 40 points edging closer by the game. Survival is on course. We were then humbled by Newcastle. Then followed that up with a stalemate against Bournemouth. Lorenzo Luca hadn't hit the ground running this season and wasn't impressed at his lack of game time. He was tasked with proving his worth, and against Forest he did as he scored a hat-trick in a 3-0 win. Coming on as a sub as well. Luca then got his chance to start and grabbed it with as much conviction as a drunk man wrestling an eel. He missed a penalty and played awful. Fortunately, his teammates did the job and we won 2-0. We then got a solid point against Spurs in a 0-0 draw. And before you know it, it's already December and we're looking into the transfer market, and Joel Hato was signed, arriving when the window opens in January. Then the season started to fall apart against City. Llorente got a straight red after 7 minutes. That's him transfer listed. It got worse as not only did City run riot, but we helped them on their way, giving Haaland an open goal for a 35-yard tap-in, I guess. We lost 6-1. We bounced back from the City defeat, beating Fulham 2-1, scoring late against Liverpool in a 1-0 win, and after 17 games we find ourselves in 6th, and overachieving, it has to be said. The youngsters are doing the business and the foundation is set for the future. We continue our decent form, grabbing another 1-0, this time against Everton, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows at Ellen Road. El Neni wasn't happy at his game time and I failed to appease him. He then handed in a transfer request. 13 minutes later we had bids upon bids, and apparently he's happy to discuss terms, but is also happy to stay. What? We then lost 3-1 to Brighton in a dismal performance, but we bounced back to finish off the year in a convincing display against Burnley. Mateus França scored a beauty after 3 minutes. Jamie Donnelly bagged a brace, and man of the moment Rooney Bargi scored yet again. 4-2, and 2024 comes to a close. Burnley are far adrift at the bottom and it's embarrassing for them, so getting a win was very important. Up next is Norwich, who are actually doing just as good as we are. 2 promoted comrades duking it out for a European charge. After the 3-3 draw earlier in the season, this time it ended 2-2. We thought we'd won it late on, but Norwich equalised even later. And with that, the new year approached and the January transfer business was in full flow. We sold the unhappy Sessegnon for 21.5 million, and we got him for free at the start of the season. Unfortunately, he fleeced me for 3.2 million of it, the cheeky bastard. We then sold Abdou Diallo for 17.5 million, having paid just 1 million last season. Another great piece of business. With us wanting to off Llorente after his red card escapades against City, we needed to strengthen at centre-back. We're weak there anyway, plus with the Diallo sale, it was time to go hunting. We then splashed the cash on Serdar Sarci for £28 million and then Zeno de Bast for his release clause of £24 million. 2 excellent signings. With the Diallo and Sessegnon sales, we've spent approximately £50 million, plus the Hato at centre-back and left-back for £14 million, so £30 million to significantly strengthen our defence. Not too bad. And we lost 2-0 against Wolves. But we never let our heads drop, bouncing back against Villa with a 2-1 win. And that man once again opening the scoring, Rooney Bargi. David Washington got injured, and to ensure we had enough cover up top for the remainder of the season, we started looking into the market, and Emmanuel Omega took our fancy. We finally sold Llorente, well, loaned him with a mandatory future fee for approximately £10 million. Not too bad for a 31-year-old. Good riddance, mate. We looked to strengthen him in midfield, and 26-year-old Anton Stach looked a viable option. A £10 million release clause. Professional personality? Don't mind if we do. We progressed in the FA Cup with a 2-0 win against Bournemouth, with Omega making his debut and scoring a penalty. A magnificent 3-2 win against Brentford, going behind early, but new boy Omega equalised before going off injured. Archie Gray put in a world-class performance, getting man of the match in a hard-fought 3-2 win. That puts us on 41 points and surely clear of relegation. But with 14 games remaining, Europe is a realistic possibility because we currently sit in 6th. Our good form faltered, but losing 2-0 to Arsenal holds no shame. This was followed by a 2-0 defeat at Old Trafford, a brace for Victor Osimhen. Up next was Chelsea and a great 2-1 win. A fortuitous bobble of the ball for Buonanni and he slotted home before Anton Stach scored this screamer, opening his account for the club. And ultimately, this turned out to be the winner. A 2-1 defeat against Palace, who were woefully out of form, really put a dent in our European hopes. We're on the outside looking in, and these are the games we really should be winning. Our FA Cup run continued with a 1-0 win against Hull. We deserved more against Newcastle, but a 1-1 draw was all we could muster. Europe feels like it's slipping further out of our reach, but avoiding relegation was the objective, and we've smashed that. So we can't be too disheartened. We got back on track against Bournemouth, scoring 3 inside of 8 minutes. Bournemouth got one back, but then went down to 10 men, and we ran riot, scoring 5 more times, getting valuable game time and fitness for returning injured players. An 8-1 win. This also really helps our goal difference. Our FA Cup dreams were then dashed, and it was literally our own doing, losing 1-0 to a first-minute goal against United. Back in the league, and we ran riot over Southampton, going from 2-1 up to 5-1 in the final 10 minutes. Pushing our goal difference could be the difference between Conference League qualification and no Europe at all. And we faltered once more against relegation-threatened Nottingham Forest as we lost 2-1. And a big 6-pointer against Spurs was a snooze fest as it finished 0-0. And the tough games continued as we hosted Manchester City. Despite not being confident, we found ourselves 2-0 up thanks to a brace from Jamie Donnelly, holding a much better account of ourselves this time after the 6-1 demolition earlier in the season. Unfortunately, we couldn't keep the lead as City drew level in the second half. We had a goal disallowed in the 98th minute, and with that, we can almost kiss Europe goodbye. In a back and forth game against Fulham, we found ourselves going ahead on 3 separate occasions, getting pegged back twice in a 3-2 win. Spurs then lost to Forest spectacularly in one of their games in hand, then drew 3-3 with United. So after 35 games, we have the same points and same goal difference as Spurs. Our European hopes are back on. Unfortunately, our next game is against Liverpool, who are on the cusp of becoming champions. And it was 2 goals from Serge Gnabry that led to a 1-1 draw, as Gnabry scored an own goal to give us the lead, only to equalise in the last 15 minutes of the game. And the returning Wilfried Gnonto scored a 93rd minute winner against Everton, which means the race for Europe is going down to the final day. Spurs beat Newcastle in their game in hand, meaning we had to head into the final day with it in their hands. Spurs though are at home to City, which is a very tough game, whereas we're at home to Brighton, which on paper is the much simpler fixture. Conference League qualification rests on this game. Can City do us a favour? Well, the drama didn't unfold as we didn't hold up our end of the bargain, losing 1-0. Spurs won against City anyway, so we finished 8th. A disappointing end to the season, but we've got to be happy with the top half finish. As the season closes, the awards are dished out, and Rooney Bargy, of course, won Young Player of the Year. And as a reward for our success, the board are giving us an extra 200k wage budget and 50 million in the transfer budget. We have players who are looking to ship out and some loaned out players with optional future fees, and we already have a pretty solid young squad, so we're in a pretty strong position. The objective for next season is to finish mid-table. I think we can do that. Who will we sign? Where will we spend our transfer war chest? See you next season.